try to address here some kind of core issues on PRT. That is, what can we do to make the capacities higher and the costs lower? I think that's really a core issue. And I started with the idea of this is a road, urban road, right? And there is some traffic on it. And what conditions do we have to provide? It's a very fundamental question, but I think that needs to be addressed. What are the conditions to move that into a Podcar system? What are the fundamental conditions that we can do that? And one of them is the capacity. Of course, our system must be, if we want to move that, must have a certain capacity. And this is always or often overlooked. Here you see a bus, right, that is providing collective transport, and you see many cars. And these cars are providing individual transport. Connecting dispersed origins and dispersed connections. So if we want to replace that, we have to provide a similar service. Otherwise, people won't move. We heard it yesterday, perfect metro system, but still individual transport. So we need to address that. And we need to have a sufficiently low cost. If we don't have the low cost, people won't use the system. So we need to provide this at least. Okay. Now, of course, there is the idea of personal rapid transit, where each vehicle contains a person or maybe two, and they have their own destination. So each person here with a color reaches its destination. Here I put the same color, so you see that. Just to explain the concept, and that's pretty clear. That's pretty known. It's a full individual service, but it has really a low capacity. And why does it have a low capacity? Because so far there is the brick wall stopping criteria, and that imposes that. Is that a laser or something? Oh yeah. Okay, so that it imposes that there is a certain space, and we leave this space. The capacity is quite limited. Right. So what do people do? The first thing you do, you increase the number of people in the pods, and you say, okay, we put kind of four people inside. For example, we keep the size. We put 4 people inside, and we let this be kind of a collective system, like a small bus system. I just want to say here that I introduced the variable individual mode share. This is just the number of people with individual destinations, and the rest is, of course, then collective destinations. There is also the notion of individual vehicle share, and which is different, but these two are linked. But the individual vehicle share are actually determining then the capacity. But okay, so the idea is this collective vehicle is stopping. It's like a bus, while the others are directly going to their destination. This is just to illustrate that the concept is already known. And okay, if you do that, you're better with your capacities. Depending on the speed, you can reach 4,000, even with a PRT small size for passenger vehicle. If that is not enough, you just grow the size of the vehicle, and this is what most PRT producers do, making vehicle bigger. You can for the collective transport, the kind of bus that stops over. You can get a higher capacities, but you still have the individual persons that want to travel. You see that, but they need bigger vehicles. So all your infrastructure gets bigger, stations get bigger, and you get this is for all collective transports. Your travel actually, the trip for the individual here gets slower because it needs to stop everywhere. So you get a slower speed, and you need actually more vehicles to provide the same service with respect to individual vehicles. So because you slow down the service. Right, you can get high capacities, really up to 20,000 or close to 18,000, dependent on the individual the individual mode share, because the more individual vehicles you have, the lower is the capacity, and it drops pretty fast, you know. So if you have a 80% individual vehicles, you have the same capacity than you have with a normal PRT. So that's kind of not so great. And the other possibility is, of course, you chain, or you form trains. Okay, you form trains, and you put them together, and you do actually the same thing, but with trains. So your infrastructure remains the same vehicles, but your stations get a bit longer, of course. Yeah. What do you need for that? You actually don't need so much innovation. You need automatic coupling. The concept of that exists already since over 100 years, so that's pretty known and used also in normal trains. Probably scale it down. And you need a control system that allows variable length trains. That's a bit tricky, and that's probably why most producers didn't go this way. Still, if you do that, you can reach also 20,000, and you can even reach it at higher speeds, and that's a good news, because the faster you run, the more trips you do, the more you earn, right? Okay, and there is another extension to that. Yeah.
Just in the previous slide.
Previous.
Your capacity doesn't seem to increase when you go beyond 50 kilometers per hour. Why is that?
Sorry, here's 50.
And then the volumes don't increase.
Yeah, because it's because of the brick wall stopping criteria. Practically, the distance between two vehicles increase with the power of 2, and with the speed, and the flows increase only linearly with the speed. So you get this drop. Yeah. Okay. So you can also chain vehicles, and that's a kind of dynamic thing. So that means you can, in your trains, you can have collective people, so they travel together to the same destination, but you can also have individual. And how do you organize that? And that's a new thing. You have here kind of a high capacity zone, which is city center, for example. And before vehicles enter this zone, they go through a compressor, right? Compressor, and they form chains. And this is the chaining process. And then they reach their destinations here, and then probably other people go in, and they want to go out of the high capacity zone, and they have this different destinations. And then they run through a decompressor, and then the vehicles are individual again, so, or low capacity here, of course. So how does that work? Okay, the innovations needed is the same for the train system and these decompressors. This is, for example, this is a compressor, right? And here you just chain up vehicles with the same destination, all right? And then you create chains. And in a decompressor, that's a normal station, right? And you just stop, and then you run off one after the other, and you have decompressed the thing. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new. Brick wall stopping criteria, couplers. It's all nothing new. It's just different organization. Okay. Yeah, and then you can reach also 10, 12,000 vehicles per hour per second, but the big difference is that you're no more so sensitive with respect to individual mode share. So you can run individual vehicles without being penalized so much with a capacity, and that's very important. So you can offer individual service also at higher capacities. Yeah, cost comparison. I did a cost comparison, and of course in the cost comparison I need to put in some costs, and but these costs are a kind of target costs. They're not. I mean, if you go now to the producers, they will give you different costs. Yeah? But these are costs already with you know some volumes of vehicles in mind. And okay, so this comparison of I also compare network classes. So not an individual city, but a class of city with a certain demand structure. Okay, so the unit cost for infrastructure, I got that from various studies. The O&M, so they are pretty known, right? At least average values. And here I used target values 70,000 for 4-seat and 125,000 for 20 passenger vehicle. O&M's 0.2 euros per passenger kilometer. These are all values that are not, you know, still reasonable. Ticket price, I just had to make a ticket price to make the comparison. €1 for collective trip, €2 for personal trip. Of course, you can change everything, but I did it for all concepts. So in order to compare them, I had to put some numbers. Right, this is okay. Bank loan, 50 years payback, and so on. Right, one, and this is the variable that allows me to compare different cities. All cities have during peak hours a certain demand structure, a pattern, right? And this pattern can be condensed down to one single, to two variables, and this is the peak hour. The peak hour network saturation. So this is the minimum safe distance divided by guidewire length divided by number of vehicles, and this is usually 0.2 to 0.6. This is the actually Professor Anderson proposed that as a way of analyzing networks, and this is pretty cool. And I need the average trip length. So these two variables kind of can quantify the kind of demand level and how is the demand distributed. And from that, I need the station density, which is 600 meters. Okay. And I also introduced a high density, a high capacity area, which I assigned with 30%. All these can change, but they change only in a certain range. All right. So what do I get out of this analysis? This is, for example, a group rapid transit. This is the cost structure. Guideway stations and vehicles in function of the network saturation. And if the network gets more saturated, I need more vehicles, of course, and they cost more. On the cost side, so this is the line. So this is cost in euro, and this is the cost I get, or the price I get for one vehicle trip, right? And these are the costs that cost me one vehicle trip. So these costs should be, of course, lower than what I get from the ticket. Right? And so you can, and I did that for different network saturations. Again, your city will be somewhere here, definitely. And here, these different lines are for different kilometers of trip lengths, right? And of course, the longer the trip, the higher the cost, right? And so you can see here from which trip lengths on you can actually make profit. Average trip, of course. All right.
2 minutes.
Okay. And right, I did that for different systems. You can see that for example for the train system, you can get a lower cost. So you're in here already at the you have a larger range to get the costs right or under what you gain. Right, and this is probably the the most interesting diagram. Here you see the capacity. Here you see the network saturation. And here you see if you gain or lose. So on the blue area you gain something, right? And on red area you lose. So, and the larger this blue area is, the more kind of cities you can implement the system by gaining something, right? And here you get it for the 20 passenger GRT, and you see that here the blue zone is mainly for if you have zero individual mode share. So you are very good if everybody is using the bus service. And this is for the train trip, and you see it's a much larger blue area. It's not you don't gain so much, but you can run the system on profit on a much larger area. So it applies to much more cities and traffic situation. And this is the situation with a chained service, with a compressor and decompressor, and you can practically make profit with the same parameters on each saturation and on almost each individual mode share. So that was my talk. So it really depends. You need the good news is you can transform cities into Podcar cities. You need technologies that are already there, and and also it allows you, this kind of analysis allows you to see, okay, where do I start if vehicles are expensive, and then you would first implement them. So the roadmap is to implement them first on high S. That means high capacity lines. You start with that. You gain some money, and then you're gonna extend to and then you're gonna extend also to low capacity lines. Okay, so that was my
fantastic. Thank you.